JTLanguage for LDS Missionaries. In this video, I'm going to show you some key features in JTLanguage with a focus on what I've done to make it a useful tool for LDS missionaries learning a new language. JTLanguage is a free website and companion phone apps I've created for studying languages. In a nutshell, I've imported the lessons from Chapter 3 of the Preach My Gospel content from churchofjesuschrist.org, such that it can be a language study source using the study tools JTLanguage provides. I can also import the available scriptures having implemented the technology, but I'm focusing on the Preach My Gospel lessons for now, as they are a key focus for missionary language learning. I'll also talk about some issues with the import at the end and some additional possibilities. Initially, I focused on Japanese and Chinese as the target languages because of the technical challenges these languages entail, with English as a host language. However, the intent is to support all languages available on the church website and the hosting platforms for either the target or host languages. Note that because of the copyright in JTLanguage, this content is protected with a package code that needs to be added to a user's JTLanguage account in order to see this content. I've created a separate video setting up JTLanguage for LDS missionaries, showing how to set up an account and how to install and set up the phone apps, as well as some tips for balancing audio media usage with limited phone memory. I'll primarily use the website for this demonstration, but the phone apps essentially provide the same features, but can be set up for full offline use, which might be necessary in the field. Courses, groups, and lessons. The first aspect of JTLanguage is that it's a hierarchical study content organizer and browser. The highest level organizational unit is called a course. The Preach My Gospel lessons are mapped to a single course in JTLanguage. The courses page shown here lists the available courses, which I've set up to show the courses from an account called LDS Library, filtered to just the Preach My Gospel course for the current target language, which is Japanese for now. Let's take a look at it by clicking on it here. The course browser pane to the left shows a tree control with a click to expand mechanism for convenient navigation. The course is further divided into a lesson and lesson group component hierarchy. An individual lesson component represents a unit of study content. The course is further divided into a lesson and lesson group component hierarchy. An individual lesson component represents a unit of study content. A lesson group represents a related group of lessons for when a course has many lessons. As we see here, each section in a Preach My Gospel lesson is mapped to a JTLanguage lesson in order to focus on a smaller unit of text to study. Study content items. Each lesson is further divided into audiovisual and textual components pertaining to the unit of text. We see here that each Preach My Gospel section maps to a lesson component with an audio media item component, text, sentence vocabulary, and word vocabulary study list item components. We'll take a look at each of these. Text components. The text component just lists the main text, in this case the text from the Preach My Gospel section. This is one example of a study list, which is a collection of study items, which can be paragraphs, sentences, words, or characters. In this case, the study items are paragraphs. The current JTLanguage account is set up with two versions or transliterations of Japanese, kanji and romaji, so text for both of these are displayed, plus the host language, currently English. There is also a kana transliteration available, if you prefer that to romaji, which you can add to the home languages settings. You could also just set up your account for kanji or romaji only. There are also different options for displaying the text here in the text browser, which we can see by unhiding the Content Options pane via the Show Content Options button link at the bottom. These include showing paragraphs or breaking the paragraphs into sentences via the row format drop-down menu, and showing the different languages either mixed together or separately via the language format drop-down menu. You can also hide individual languages using the Show Hide button links here. These options will persist per content item type. There is also audio associated with each paragraph or sentence. Note how each study item has two audio playback buttons, one for normal speed and one for slowed down speed.
神は愛にあふれる天のお父であられる。神は愛にあふれる天のお父であられる。
The media language option selects between the target and host languages. At the bottom you have additional options. Using the print button link, you can print the current item in the current format. Using the export button link, you can export it in a variety of formats to a file or on-screen text in some cases. These options also appear at every level in the course hierarchy. This reflects a particular philosophy in JTLanguage for allowing the greatest freedom and flexibility, even though the size at times may not make this practical. Setting up the text study tool. Opening the text component in the course browser tree control, we see a text study component. This takes you to the study list tool page for this content item. The first time you visit this page, it defaults to the Flash tool. The tool drop-down menu changes the page to a particular study tool. At present, there are Flash, Flip, Hands-Free, Match, Test, and Text Study tools available. The Text Study tool is of special interest, so let's look at that one first. It shows a pane with the text from the associated study list component, the text content item in this case. Note the yellow highlighting of the words. This means that these words have the status new, meaning you haven't encountered them in the Text Study tool before, or that you specifically set their state to new previously via one of the Forget buttons. For languages which don't use spaces to separate words, you might find it easier to see the word boundaries by toggling the Show Word Boundaries option below. You can also show and hide languages like in the previous page. Let me hide all but the kanji for now. Once you hide one or more languages, the Show, Hide, Translate button link appears. Clicking this will toggle the display of a little T for Translate button next to each study item. Clicking on it will toggle displaying the hidden languages for just that study item. I tend to prefer this mode. Note that these options persist, so that you only need to set this up once per study list type. If you prefer to study Romaji, just toggle off the kanji and toggle on the Romaji. For the text pane, you also have options for the text layout similar to those in the text content item display. Let me unhide the languages first. Using the language format drop-down menu, you can select mixed or separate languages. Using the row format drop-down menu, you can select paragraphs or sentences. Studying words in the Text Study tool. When you click on a word in the text pane, the study item pane will show the definition of the word in the different target language transliterations and the host language definitions. The target language audio will also be played. You can turn off the audio with the sticky Enable/Disable audio button at the top of the main content area. If you are on a device with a smaller screen, you can rearrange the panes to be shown vertically stacked. Click the little icon with the two stacked panes in the study item title. The icon changes to two vertical panes, meaning you can click it again to go back to the horizontally stacked panes. Note how the word is highlighted in green with a gray border. The border identifies it as the currently clicked word, but also note that everywhere else the word appears, it's also highlighted in green, though without the gray border. As I mentioned before, words not clicked on before are highlighted in yellow, meaning they have the new status, meaning you haven't studied them before. By default, when you click on a word, it's given a status of active and highlighted in green. Words can be assigned different levels or grades of knowing it by clicking on the numbered buttons in the study item pane based on a number scale from 1 to 5, where 5 means you know the word well, 1 means you don't know it at all yet, and anything in between means different levels of knowing it, according to your way of thinking. By default, a grade of 1, don't know it, is assigned to freshly clicked words. Note how the green highlighting changes to a lighter shading for grades higher than 1, with 5 being represented with a very light shading. The 5 button is shown darker in the study item pane as well. Below the numbered grading buttons, you can click on the Learn button to indicate that you already know the word. Note how the highlighting is removed from the text. You can also reset the status to New. Click on the New button to restore the new word status in yellow shading. I'll click on the word again to set it to grade 1. Click on the T button to the left to look at the languages we hid, just for this item. Note how our word is highlighted in the Romaji romanization as well. We can click on words in the alternate transliterations as well. I'll click on the Romaji I. Note how it's both highlighted there and in the main target language as well. Note that you can mark and examine phrases as well. Click on the first word of the phrase, then shift-click the last word of the phrase. The highlighting will be changed to have a purplish outline, which will have a different shading level according to the grading. Select a previous phrase by clicking on its outline. Note that because Google Translate is used to obtain the phrase definitions, you need to be online on the phone app version for phrases not studied before. Remove a phrase by marking it as learned. Remove all the current study list phrases by clicking the Delete My Phrases button. I'll do the latter. Changing definitions in the Text Study tool. The first time you use the Text Study tool on a study list, it goes through and collects all the words in the target language text. It then looks for existing vocabulary items in a private database keyed to the user. If a word is not found, it will create a new vocabulary item using the target language word and its transliterations, and looking up host language definitions from a dictionary JTLanguage maintains, or Google Translate if not found in the dictionary. And then it will store this vocabulary item in the database, keyed to the user. If the vocabulary item was found, meaning the word was encountered by the text study tool before, it will simply reuse the found vocabulary item. The current dictionary is secular in nature, so if you don't like a default definition that is selected, you can either change it, show additional definitions with optional reordering, or add a new definition. Note, however, that these changes will appear with later instances of clicking the word in this and other study list pages. Note that the vocabulary items store additional definitions from the dictionary, as a word can have multiple meanings or senses. It picks the first meaning from the dictionary, making the assumption that it's the most likely meaning. To see these other definitions, on the line that says All Definitions, click on the Show button. The current definition plus any other definitions appear below it. The definitions that appear below the host language label, English in this case, are what I call the main definitions. The definitions under the All Definitions label I call the other definitions. You can promote additional definitions from the other definitions to the main definitions. To do this, click the Promote red arrow button. This adds the definition also to the end of the main definitions. If you want to change the order of either the main or the other definitions, click one of the Move Up or Move Down buttons with the red arrow on the document icon next to the definition you want to move. If you want to remove a definition from either the main or the other definitions, click the Delete button with the red X on the document icon next to the definition. Now let's say I want to change one of the definitions. For example, let's say I want to simplify the default definition that came up. I'll click the Edit button on the line of the definition, and in the edit control that appears, I'll enter my new definition. I'll click Save to save it. My new definition appears in place of the old one. Note that it also gets added to the other definition list instead of replacing it there. Alternatively, instead of editing the existing definition, let's say I want instead to add a new definition or sense. To do this, I'll click the Add button with the red plus on the document icon in the All Definitions line, and in the edit control that appears, I'll enter my new definition. I'll click Save to save it. My new definition is added to the end of the main definitions list and also to the top of the other definitions list. I can move it up with the Move Up button if I wish. To reset the other definitions list from the dictionary, click the Update icon with the circular arrows next to the All Definitions label. It will replace all the definitions in the other definitions list with only those from the dictionary, meaning any definitions you edited or added there will be lost. The main definition list will be unchanged, however. If you manually delete each one after the last one is deleted, the first definition from the other definition list will be promoted automatically. Vocabulary items persist. Having the vocabulary items saved for us in the database this way is useful. Let's demonstrate one thing this does for us. Now, if we click the blue Next Lesson navigation arrow button at the top, we are taken to the text content item of the next lesson. Note how the word we clicked on before is highlighted there as well. This is because all the vocabulary items are stored independently and not in the study list. I'll go back to the previous page. Let's say that I've read through the text and clicked on all the words I didn't know. The rest of the words are still highlighted in yellow, meaning they are new, but I actually know them, so I want to mark them as learned. To do this, I can use the convenient Learned New button. This button will change the state of all new words to learned, removing their shading, but leaving the active green words alone. Let's navigate to the next lesson. Note how any words changed to learned in the previous page are shown without shading here too. Let's say I actually forgot one of the learned words. I click on the word and it shows up in the study item pane with its learned status. I'll click the 3 button to change it back to active status with a grade of 3, meaning I sort of know it, but had to really think. I'll go back to the previous page and see my changes there as well. Let's say I clicked the Learn New button by mistake. I can click the Forget Learned button, which will change only learned items to new. Let's say I finally know all these words. I can click the Learned All button to mark them all as learned, removing all the shading. Should you want to reset all the words to new status, you can click the Forget All button. Everything is shaded in yellow again. Though note that this only resets the words in this study list. I'll show you how to clear out your whole vocabulary list in the next section. I'll restore my clicked items for use in the next section. Local vocabulary lists. Note that you can browse and manage these vocabulary items by means of the Manage Vocabulary page, which you can get to via the Local Vocabulary button under the Study Item pane, or the Vocabulary List link at the bottom of the main content area. Note that this page only displays vocabulary items collected from the associated study list. The Tree Node Content column shows where the word was first clicked on in the Text Study tool. I'll scroll down to that first word we clicked. Note how it shows the current status of the words. Also on the line for each word, it also shows buttons for changing the status and also editing or deleting it. If I click on the Edit button, we get an Edit Vocabulary Item pane similar to the Study Item pane of the Text Study tool that we can use to edit the vocabulary item in much the same way. Note at the bottom of the page, there are buttons for operating on the whole list. By checking the checkboxes next to the items, you mark those words for the group operations. The Select button group allows you to check or uncheck all the items, or using the Select Between button, you can check a starting and ending checkbox and click this to select the items in between. The Edit Items button group contains buttons for deleting the checked items or deleting your whole vocabulary list for the current language and user profile, regardless of what vocabulary items are displayed. You can do this to start from scratch, such that all words will be shown as new the next time you visit the Text Study Tool page. The Sandbox button group contains a Copy Selected button for copying the selected items to what I call the sandbox, which is like the operating system's clipboard. If you create your own study list somewhere, you can paste the items from the sandbox there. Note that it's additive. The number in the button group title shows how many items are there already. You can use the Clear Sandbox button to clear out the sandbox. The numbered grading and other status changing buttons below can be used to change the status of the selected items. At the top of the list, there are controls for changing the paging, which breaks up longer lists into smaller lists. Set how many items to display on a page via the Page Size drop-down menu. Navigate to another page by clicking its page number link. You can sort the list in various ways by clicking on items in the column titles, which are blue links. I'll click the Status column title link. The numerically graded active items appear first because of the sort order. Note how the parenthesized text next to the Clear Sort Order button identifies the current sorting order. Click a link again to toggle the sort order between ascending and descending. Note how a minus is added to the sort order identification. Note that the sorting combines when you click multiple items. Clicking a different link will make that the major sorting order, and any previous sort order the minor. Also, the pagination will be redone after the sorting. Clear the sorting by clicking on the Clear Sort Order button link. You can also toggle hiding and showing of vocabulary items based on the status by toggling the Show Hide status links. I'll click the Hide New button link, which changes to a Show New line. This can be useful when you have a lot of new or learned items. Click Done to go back to the Text Study tool or whatever the previous page was. Global Vocabulary List. The Global Vocabulary button takes you to a Manage Vocabulary page that looks and operates just like the local vocabulary version, but in this case will display all the vocabulary items from all content that you've used the Text Study tool on, paging as necessary. Get to this page also via the Manage Vocabulary item of the Home menu. You can delete all the vocabulary items for your current profile and language using the Delete All button link, regardless of what vocabulary items are displayed. You can do this to start from scratch, such that all words will be shown as new the next time you visit the Text Study tool page. Studying vocabulary items. Going back to the Text Study tool, let's say you've read through the text and marked items you didn't know. At this point, you could go on to another text content and study it, assuming you will eventually learn the unknown words as they pop up over and over again. Or if you would like to work on memorizing the unknown words right away, note that you can use the other study tools on these vocabulary items. For future reference, note the Study Vocabulary button here. It will take you to the Flash Study tool with the vocabulary as source directly as a shortcut. But let's take the long way. To do this, select a different tool, the Flash tool in this case, via the Tool drop-down menu, and find the Source drop-down menu at the top, and change it to show Vocabulary instead of Study List. The Study tool will then use the vocabulary list as its source instead of the study list items. For example, the text content item itself. Note how the text just above the grading buttons display a status running grade of 1, which was carried over from the text study tool. Although the status of the vocabulary items and the grading status of the study list items are stored in separate places, JTLanguage will try to keep them in sync between the text study tool and the other tools. Hopefully, this tool's sourcing mechanism won't be too confusing. This concludes our look at the text study tool, which is just one of the study tools JTLanguage provides. We'll look at the other study tools also, but a little more briefly. I spent more time on the text study tool because of its importance. The other key tool is the flashcard tool, which we'll look at next and spend a little more time on because of its importance. Flash tool. The flash tool simulates a stack of flashcards, each with 2 or possibly more card sides. You grade your responses with the buttons below the cards. The first click flips the card to the backside, showing the answer, and in this case, playing the associated audio as well. Note that on an iPhone, you need to click the play button to get it to play for the first card only, to give it permission to play audio automatically. The second grading button click records the response and takes you to the next card. You have an option of selecting different algorithms for selecting which card will be displayed next. By default, the adaptive algorithm is used, which takes into account your grading. A grade of 1 means you didn't know the answer, so that the card will be displayed again much sooner. A grade of 5 means you knew the answer well, so the card won't be displayed again for a while. A grade in between 1 and 5 indicates some estimated level of partially knowing it. I put up some suggestions in the pop-up help tips, but it can mean whatever works for you, as long as you are consistent. Usually I click 2 if I got part right, but something else wrong. Clicking 5 through the next card, we see that we've already come back to the first card after just a few seconds. If I had picked a higher grading, it would have taken longer to see this card. Also, the adaptive algorithm uses a running average in its calculation, so even if I click 5, know it, the second time around, it will have a running average of 3, so the card will appear again faster than if I had clicked 5 the first time. Other card selection algorithms can be selected, such as Lightner for a staged learning progress mechanism, Chunky for grouped units of study items you must master before progressing, Spaced Interval for reviewing cards based on time, ignoring the grading, and also simple linear forward and backward, and random card selection algorithms. The card selection algorithm and other overall options are stored in a tool profile, and you can select another profile, edit the current one, or create a new profile via the Profile drop-down menu. Alternatively, the Tool Profile menu navigation takes you to a page displaying the current tool profile's contents, and you can do other operations on it, such as clicking Edit Profile to change the card selector algorithm. Note that a tool profile is different from a user profile. One of the things the tool profile stores is a list of tool configurations. A tool configuration controls what is displayed on flashcard sides, including text, pictures, and audio media, plus optionally one of the provided user interaction mechanisms, such as text input, voice recording, speech-to-text recognition, multiple choice, descramble, or fill in the blanks. Should you change the languages in your user profile, you probably need to reset the tool configurations, as they may reference languages you changed. Do this via the Add Default Configurations button link at the bottom of the tool profile page. This will just redo the configurations from scratch. Alternatively, instead of changing the languages in the current user profile, if you add a new user profile with the changed languages via the Add Profile button link on the Home Profile page, the new profile will have its own default profile and configurations created independent of the old profile. I talk about user profiles more in my Setting Up JTLanguage for LDS Missionaries video. Back at the Flash page, the Config drop-down menu selects the current configuration and also has shortcuts to edit or add configurations. The name of the configuration is by default a coded representation of what it does, plus the current card selection algorithm name. The first term is the main category for the configuration, and the rest of the terms indicate what else is in its card sides. Note that this is just a default name given to it upon creation. If you prefer, you can simplify it by renaming the configurations to something easier for you to read, and you can also edit the list in the tool profile to just have the configurations you want. I've just gotten used to the default names, which give me a better indication of what the configuration contains. I'll enumerate the main configuration categories. Read configurations lets you practice seeing study items in the target language and wants you to provide the translation or meaning just in your mind, or to yourself out loud, if you prefer. The first grading click shows the host language study item, and you compare your mental answer with it, and then actually grade it with your second grading click. This is the configuration we just saw, with a configuration that specified audio on the second or answer card. Listen configurations let you practice hearing study items in the target language and translate them mentally. Write configurations let you practice writing the host language translation. You write your translation and then click Check to check your answer. A comparison mechanism shows matching words in green, errors in red, and red blanks for missing items. Any punctuation is ignored. Click Retry to try again. You still need to provide your own grade. Speak configurations have you record your speech for comparison with the provided audio. Kame wa watashi tachi no ten no ochichi desu. Kame wa watashi tachi no ten no ochichi desu.
神は私たちの天のお父です。
A Recognize option lets you send your recording to Google's speech-to-text service and compare the text against that in the study list. 福音は私を祝福する。
福音は家族を祝福する。
福音は私を祝福する。Dictate configurations have you listen to the target language study item and type it in the target language. The check button lets you check your transcription using the comparison display described for write. C configurations have you translate from a picture. Trans configurations, short for translation or translate, have you translate the host language items to the target language. Additional options in the configuration specify which output and input mechanisms are used, including text for a text display, audio for audio playback, write for text input, speak for audio recording input, recognize for audio recording with speech to text. The scramble configurations for use with text or sentence study lists have you to scramble a sentence in which words have been randomly rearranged. Choice configurations show a multiple choice prompt with options for text, audio, and picture output.
福音は家族を祝福する。
Blanks configurations have you fill in the blanks for words randomly omitted. Hybrid configurations randomly select from a list of selected configurations such that you have a possibly different configuration for each card iteration, mixing it up for you. Hands-free configurations are for the hands-free tool, which we'll look at later. These have 3 card sides in either a target-host-target or host-target-host order, repeating the first card at the end of each item. You can edit, delete, or add new configurations on the tool profile page. The configuration page is pretty complicated because of all the options. Note that they are grouped by card side and then by categories. Access the configurations and profiles from the drop-down menus on the study page or via the tool menu. A set of default configurations are created for you automatically for each profile, and you can change the defaults as well. A special mode drop-down menu lets you select the normal flashcard mode or special modes for testing yourself, reviewing only previously seen cards or studying only new cards. With respect to the vocabulary items collected, note that the study tools will use the items marked new as well. Therefore, it's probably a good habit, once you've picked out all the words you didn't know or need to review using the text study tool, to click on the Learn New button to mark all the commonly used words you already know as learned. They are then excluded from the study tools. Otherwise, if you select the Review option from the Mode drop-down menu, you can temporarily exclude them, since in the Review mode, only previously graded items are chosen by the card selector algorithm. Again, the Source drop-down menu determines where the study tools get the study content from. The current source setting shown here is vocabulary. If we change it to study list, the study tools will obtain their study items from the study list directly, in this case the paragraphs from the text study list. This is probably not practical in this case. Let's take this opportunity to look at the sentence vocabulary and words vocabulary study lists. Words vocabulary. Looking at the tree control, we find a words vocabulary study list content item in the lesson. Click on it to see its contents. The web crawler mechanism I wrote to obtain the text from the church website sets up the lesson format by means of a lesson master mechanism, which is like a template for a lesson describing what content items it will have. I had the crawler also walk through the text and pull out all the unique words from the text study list, which is what you see here. Also, I had it omit words that appeared in previous lessons. Thus, the lessons progressively add vocabulary. The word definitions were obtained from the dictionary at the time of import, so it won't be the same as the vocabulary list extracted by the text study tool if you've edited any definitions. Also, because of the size of the words list, I had the importer break up the list into a hierarchy of study lists with no more than 20 words per study list, and further regrouping them in units of 5. You can see this hierarchy in this tree control. Note, however, that parent study lists also display all their children and grandchildren, so you can see all the words grouped together as one big list, with embedded headings showing the divisions. In addition, note that study lists created in courses and groups with a special Collect Descendant Items option flag, which is on in this course and groups, will also collect and display all the study items in descendant nodes. Note that the study items are not actually stored in the course or group study list, but they are collected from the descendants on the fly. Note the different layout from the text study list, which I call the table layout. Note that via the Content Options pane, which you can unhide by clicking its link at the bottom, you can switch to a list layout via the Display Format drop-down menu, which is more like the text layout. You also have, via the Language Format drop-down menu, the option to mix or separate the languages. You can also hide and show languages via the toggle button links in the Content Options pane. Each study item also has play buttons for both normal and slowed down speed. Change the media language in the content options. Looking back at the tree control, note how each word's vocabulary study list has a study words item under it, which you can also use to navigate to the study tools for each study list. Note also the study button shortcut at the top, which takes us to a page for the study list, using the last used study tool type. The text study tool mechanism is also useful for filtering word study lists. You can use the text study tool on a word's vocabulary list as well, clicking on all the words you didn't know or need to review, click Learn New, and then use the flash or other tools with the review mode set to focus on just the active words. Unfortunately, at present, I don't have an option for limiting the number of vocabulary items in the flash or other study tools. However, the adaptive card selection algorithm and the mode option can help with this automatically. Sentence vocabulary. Looking back at the tree control, we also find a sentence vocabulary study list content item next to the text study list we looked at before. Click on it to see its contents. Similar to the words vocabulary, the sentence vocabulary study list was created from the text study list by pulling out all the unique sentences, which is what you see here. Sentences appearing in previous lessons were omitted, and if a study list has more than 20 sentences, it will be subdivided. The content options are like those for the word vocabulary. We can change the layout to a list layout. Note again the play buttons for both normal and slowed speed. In general, I find that studying whole sentences is as important as studying individual words. Of course, the sentence vocabulary study list can be used with all the study tools as well. The words and sentences vocabulary study lists are provided as a more direct way to browse or study the words and sentences from the text. Media content items. Going back to the tree control, note the audio media item component in the lesson. Clicking on the audio component shows a media player for playing back the audio for the text as a whole.
神は愛にあふれる天のお父であられる。神は私たちの天のお父です。私たちは神の子供です。
At present, the associated audio file is a synthesized speech rendering made during the import process. JTLanguage can use human spoken recordings, but this being very labor-intensive and not having the resources, I opted for a synthesized version, which JTLanguage inherently supports. The media player has options for displaying subtitles in any of the target or host languages or transliterations, which are mapped to individual sentences. We see here for Japanese, we have the kanji, romaji, or English that was set up for this user profile. For Chinese, we could have traditional, simplified, pinyin, or English. The media player also shows the text in a text list pane below, with click navigation to jump to a particular sentence, and which also tracks during playback. Text can be played at normal speed, slowed, or speeded up.
神は愛にあふれる天のお父であられる。
You also have an option for single stepping forward through the media, stepping backward, or repeating the last step or sentence. Note that there can be video media items as well, though I don't use this in Preach My Gospel. These can be references to local or external video files, or YouTube videos can be referenced. The example course demonstrates this. There can also be other media types such as PDF files and other external text types. I mention this should someone wish to create other content. I have more in mind for the media player in terms of future features. I'm thinking to add options for having multiple subtitle languages at once, and an option that basically embeds a kind of text study tool for the subtitles, so you can click on words in the subtitles and get definitions. Flip tool. Now let's go back and continue our look at the other study tools. We'll use one of the Words Vocabulary Study List leaf nodes as source. Use the Tool drop-down menu to change to the Flip tool. In addition to the Flash tool, the Flip tool also simulates flashcards as a memory exercise, except that the cards are displayed all at once on the page, such that you pick the cards yourself in whatever order. It's as if you spread out all the flashcards on a table at once in rows and columns. You click on a card to display its backside text and or pictures, which also plays any configured audio. Media playback buttons allow you to replay the audio. Click on the cards again to flip them back. You can have multiple cards flipped. Click on Reset to flip all the cards back to the initial state. Click on Random to randomize the cards. You can select a different configuration that displays the host language first. What I usually do is go through the cards, leave flip the cards I think I know, but flip back the ones I don't know, and move on to other cards, repeatedly going through the unflipped cards until I have flipped them all. Hands-free tool. The hands-free tool is a variation of the Flash tool that lets you step through flashcards without any grading interaction. 2 default tool configurations are provided with 3 card sides each, with both text and audio output. One for target, host, target language items, one for host, target, host. You can set the interval between the cards with the pause drop-down menu. Use the play, pause, stop, and single step buttons to control playback. This is one way to review study lists or vocabulary hands-free when you're on the go. Match tool. The match tool simulates a matching exercise. The front and back sides of cards are displayed in randomized columns for each language used, based on the relevant information in the current tool configuration. The first click turns the clicked item orange. Then you select an item in the next column, and so forth. If the items correspond to each other, they are removed and collected in the Matched Items pane below. If the items don't match, they are displayed in red, indicating an error. You just select another item to try again. Click Reset to randomize the columns. Test tool. The test tool allows you to display all the cards on one page as if it were a written test, 1 column per card side, and then answer each card. The tool configuration determines the card output and input type. Configurations with no input configured default to text input. The hybrid configuration lets you mix up the configurations. You click Check to check your answers, which then gives you your score. You can also go back and change answers with the Edit button, and then click Check again. The Retry button will let you retry with the same questions, and the Reset button will reconfigure the page to an initial state, perhaps randomizing items. Lesson Study Tool. In addition to these study tools, which are linked to study lists, there's also an automated lesson study mechanism, which can draw from multiple content items in a lesson. This can be a special media item the teacher sets up in the lesson, or it can be automatically provided in the lesson via the Lesson Study node in the tree control, which is what we see here. This mechanism will use a kind of a script to control what it does. The scripting language used is a superset of JTLanguage's Markup Template mechanism, which also handles custom layouts of study lists, lessons, and document content items, and is also the basis for laying out and generating audio media files. The automated lesson study mechanism will use the default markup template provided by JTLanguage, by a lesson's creator, or you can select a default template yourself via the Home Settings page's default automated study markup template field. We cover creating markup templates in other videos and documentation pages. The Study Template drop-down menu on the Lesson Study page lets you select from other scripts from JTLanguage or other teachers as well. The Lesson Study tool provides playback controls like a media player. Note the main control buttons including play, pause, stop, single step, and repeat. You click the play button to start the lesson study.
God is our loving Heavenly Father. Please listen to the following sentences at normal speed.
Note how the script was able to pull information from the current lesson, such as the lesson title. This is not hard-coded in the script, it comes from the lesson on the fly. Note also how when audio played, a media pane appeared showing a control panel just for that audio. A text pane was also displayed showing the text output from the script on the fly, usually mirroring what is spoken. The script can also display stuff from other pages, such as walking you through study items, playing media files with various media player displays, displaying entire study lists, running study tool sessions, speaking and displaying lesson notes, and also displaying an interactive page showing buttons specified in the script that allows students to interactively decide what to do next. Note that this is all done on the fly, such that the script can automatically select study items based on the grading history or without regarding it. A script can have marked sections. You can jump to these marked sections in the script if the script has them. This can give the user an idea of what's in the script too. The current default script starts by reading the sentences at normal speed, then slow speed, then with translation, and then recites the vocabulary. Then it will use a flash tool on the sentences and word lists with a few different configurations. You can just click the Done button to continue from one study session to the next. Then it shows a set of buttons the user can click for various actions. I'll use the Go to Section drop-down menu to go there after pressing play. The current default script was mainly meant for smaller lessons. The Preach My Gospel lessons probably have too much content for the default lesson study script to be useful. But if you have some kind of regular study processes, you or someone else could probably come up with an appropriate script to automate them. If nothing else, it's just cool technology I wanted to show you. Document items and comments. The Preach My Gospel course doesn't use these, but in addition to study lists and media items, JTLanguage courses, groups, and lessons can potentially have document items and comment items. A document item can store and display formatted text and graphics, as well as embedded content from other content items. It uses what I call the markup template mechanism to supply the formatting and layout information. The heart of a template is a markup language I created that is an extension of HTML, with special elements for substitution and flow control. For example, this page from the example course shows a picture with callouts pointing to specific items. Neither the picture or the text are included in the markup template. Special substitution directives pull these from the lesson referencing the markup template and expect the lesson to provide a picture with the callouts in specific places on the outside and having the study list with the needed study items in the proper order. It will also pull the appropriate language items from the study items, so a markup template can be used with any set of languages that the study items provide. Scrolling down, we see some more formatted text, also pulled from multiple study lists in the lesson. The markup template could also include media players and stuff like that from other types of JTLanguage pages. I've used it previously to display lesson summaries and grammar and cultural notes. JTLanguage also supports a comments content item, which allows users to post comments and communicate with each other. I don't use this in the Preach My Gospel course at this time. Plans. JTLanguage provides a way for the students to copy and reorder courses, groups, lessons, content items, and study items to their own private trees. I call this tree object a study plan. A plan is similar to a course, except that users can copy other courses, groups, lessons, study lists, media items, document items, or selected study items to it and its subordinate nodes. The Plans page, under the Plans menu, displays your plans. Clicking on the plan, I see its contents, a lesson I copied over from the Preach My Gospel course. Initially, the content items are just references to the source, but if you edit them, they become independent items, so you can edit them without changing the source. You can also create your own groups, lessons, study lists, and other content items in your plans in pretty much the same way you can create them in courses. Plans can be studied in the same way as courses. Throughout a course hierarchy, you can see various Add XX to Plan button links. These will take you to a page where you can add the specified item to a place in a plan you can select. On study list pages, there is also an Add Study Items to Plan button link that takes you to a page where you can add selected study items to a study list in a plan. Creating your own courses, lessons, study lists, and media items. I'll touch on some key features for this only lightly, as this is way too much to cover in detail here. So let me refer you to the help documents for more detailed how-to information on creating courses, lessons, content items, and so forth. But let me give you some highlights. In JTLanguage, both teachers and students can create their own courses, lessons, study lists, and media items. However, student-created courses are visible only to the student. Also, teachers can edit other teachers' content for things like fixing errors or adding translations and so forth, if the teacher has allowed this via permission options set on the course or lessons. Courses page. The Courses page has an Add Course button link at the bottom. All users can use this to create their own course tree objects. But again, for users with the student role, these will be private to the student. The Add Course page is for giving JTLanguage some information about the course to be created, including its title, description, supported languages, and so forth. Adding groups, lessons, and content items will have similar pages. You can also create courses by importing them in various formats via the Import Courses button link at the bottom. The Export Courses button link lets you export one or more courses in a variety of formats, including some textual formats. This is also one way to back up and restore your courses. I recommend backing up your courses whenever you make changes to them. A line for a course you don't own also shows some action buttons for the course, such as Go To navigate to the course's main page, Add Course to Plan, and Print Course. A line for a course you do own shows some additional action buttons for editing the course's profile, moving it up or down in the course list, and deleting it. The red lettering for the course means it's a private course. Managing courses, groups, lessons, and content items. The course and group pages for courses or groups you own will have an Edit Course Children or Edit Group Children button link at the bottom of the Lessons and Groups pane. This will take you to an Edit Children page where you can do various operations on the course or group hierarchy. It lists the group or lessons node hierarchy in the node with individual action buttons for operating on these subordinate nodes. Below the hierarchy list are buttons for more collective operations, such as managing node selections, copy, cut, paste, and adding a group, lesson, or multiple lessons, deleting them all, and some more specialized editing operations. This is where you'll come to add new groups or lessons to your course or group. The course, group, and lesson pages for those you own will also have an Edit Lesson Content button link at the bottom of the content pane. This will take you to an Edit Content page where you can do various operations on the content items in the immediate course, group, or lesson node. It lists the content item hierarchy in the node with individual action buttons for operating on the content items. Below the hierarchy list are buttons for more collective operations such as managing content item selections, copy, cut, paste, and adding one or multiple content items based on a selected type, deleting them all, and some more specialized editing operations. This is where you'll come to add new content items to your course, group, or lesson. Each content item type will have its own kind of pages for creating and editing them. Lesson Master Templates. A lesson master is a template for a lesson, group, or course node that can be used in creating these nodes. It basically defines what content items will be in the nodes that reference it. You can create individual content items or groups of content items of the same type via the Edit Content page, but this can be kind of tedious. A lesson master lets you set up a template describing the content items that will allow the content items to be created when a node is created. Then you just have to fill in the specific content of the components, such as its study items or uploading media items. The Teacher Masters menu navigation will take you to a page where you can manage your lesson masters. A lesson master stores master content items that define the content items to be created. You can optionally create menu items to be used in the tree control display, and other lesson options can be set from here as well. In creating lesson masters, you also have the option of viewing and copying from other lesson masters, including those from other teachers, if they were made public. Markup Templates. We touched on Markup Templates with the document content items and the lesson study mechanism, and we will soon for the audio generation mechanism. A markup template can also be used to lay out study lists as well. The heart of a markup template is a markup language extended from HTML. It adds special substitution and control flow elements and placeholders. A markup template can be stored directly in a content item, or it can be stored externally and referenced. The Teacher Markups menu navigation takes you to a page where you can manage your external markup templates. The Markup Template page lists what's in a markup template. Button links at the bottom and elsewhere list links to other pages that can edit different aspects of a markup template, including the markup code itself. A markup template can also store a set of strings used in embedded text that can be translated. It also supports audio associated with the strings, which can be synthesized. Importing and exporting study lists. At the bottom of a study list page, you will see button links for various things you can do with a study list. The Import and Export button link lets you import or export a study list or its text from or to an external file, or for some formats, text entered or displayed directly on the page. A format mechanism in JTLanguage allows me to provide means for importing and exporting nodes and content items in different formats you select from. Two special pattern formats, called pattern line and pattern block, lets you import or export study lists or text in a format you specify using a special token substitution string pattern. Pattern line format expects study items in consistently formatted lines or line groups, and pattern block expects study items in language blocks of consistently formatted lines or line groups. For example, the pattern shown here for the pattern line import page expects the study items to be formatted in lines where each line contains the first and second target language items and the host language items, each separated by a bar character. If we go to the export page and do an on-page export, I can show you an example of this pattern, as it is the reciprocal of the import page. Note the output in the export output pane. Let me change the pattern to put it on multiple lines. Note how it also lets you select individual study items at the bottom. I click Export and now see the output in line groups for the target and host languages. If I copy this to the clipboard and went to the import page, I could import this into a study list. Note that this format could be used for lessons, groups, and entire courses using special comment directives that mark the starting and ending points for these, plus attributes like titles and so forth. There are import and export button links on the lesson, group, and course pages as well, such that you can import or export at any level in the tree hierarchy. Editing study lists. Via the Edit Study List button link at the bottom of a study page, I can go to a page that lets me edit different aspects of a study list. The Select Display drop-down menu lets me select between editing the text study items, document markup template information, the content item profile, or other content options. On the text display page, we see the study items listed as a table for words or sentences vocabulary study lists. For text and some others, it would be more of a list format. Each study item line has action buttons for operating on the media or the text of the study item. For the media column, these include action buttons for playing the media, recording it, mapping text to it, uploading media files, generating synthesized speech, editing media run information, and deleting the associated media. The Text Study Actions column includes action buttons for editing the text, inserting a new study item before or after, deleting it, editing annotations that can be associated with the study items, and editing sentence or word boundaries. For example, if I click on a study item's Edit button, I can edit its text. The Translate button would let me enter just the main target or host language items and then translate them using Google Translate. Below the table of study items, you see various buttons for operating on the list, arranged in groups of Select, Edit Items, Edit Language, Sandbox, and Speech Synthesis. For example, the Append button link will let me append one or more study items, displaying edit boxes for this, including a Translate button. The Edit Language group of buttons lets me operate on one or more languages at a time. For example, setting the language drop-down to Japanese Romaji and clicking the Edit Language button, I can edit just the selected Romaji items. If I set the language to My Languages, it will open edit boxes for all the languages of the selected items. The Translate button in the Edit Language button group would let me add automated translations for the selected items. The items in the Sandbox button group let me cut, copy, or paste selected study items and any associated media to or from a sandbox, which is kind of like the operating system's clipboard, but independent. The Clear and Show Sandbox buttons will clear or toggle the display of the sandbox contents. Note that the sandbox is additive. You can do multiple cut or copy operations which append the items to the sandbox until you explicitly clear it with the Clear button. The Speech Synthesis pane shows options and a button for generating synthesized speech for selected study items. You select which language items to use, the voice name, the speech speed as a number between -10 and 10, negative numbers being slower, and whether existing media should be overwritten, and whether a separate OS thread should be kicked off for it. If the latter is checked, the page will show progress status. Creating and editing audio. When you are creating or editing audio content media items, in setting up the content item profile, in addition to the languages supported, you can link it to a study list for use for the written version of the content or the subtitles. You can also select from different media players, from full, small, tiny, to none. If you go to the initial media player, it will show a message about the media file not being found, possibly because it hasn't been loaded or recorded yet. You have a number of ways to get an audio media file for the media item. You can upload an existing file via the Upload Media button link, which takes you to a page where you can upload the file from your computer. You can record audio directly in JTLanguage via the Record Edit button link, which takes you to a Record Media page. But I usually prefer to record media in the Map Media page via the Map Media to Text button link, because it lets me see the text, and I can also do the media to text mapping while I'm there. Here's a little demonstration. I click the Record button to start recording, speak the text, then click Stop to end the recording, and click Save to save it. In the visualization pane, I select the main part of the audio, and then I crop it with the Crop button, clicking Save again. I want to map the text to the audio. Because I have distinct pauses between the words, I can use the Auto Map mechanism. I click on the first item and click Auto Map, which then associates the text with the audio and displays the timing association as orange shading in the visualization pane. I can switch the mapper to a player mode and click Play. Note how the subtitles are synchronized with the audio. Scrolling down, you can see that you can even edit or input the text here, which could be useful for transcribing. If I go back to the Words Vocabulary study list, first deleting the synthesized media using the Edit Media Runs buttons, I can see that on clicking the play buttons, I have the audio from the recording I made just for each word. I can even play it slow. I also have the option to generate a media file, possibly using existing study item media. Before I do that, however, let me convert the media segment references to individual files via the Extract Media from References button in the Edit Language pane. But before I do that, let me click on the Edit Media Runs action button of the first study item to show you what the reference media runs look like. Note how they reference the media item and have a time range. Now I'll close this, click the Extract Media from References button, and then look at the media runs again. Note how they are files now instead. I did this because I want to use the real recording in the media file I'm going to generate. First, I'll go back to the media player and click the Delete Media button link to delete the associated media file. Then I'll click the Generate Media button link to go to the Generate Media page. I have the option of using an existing markup template to lay out the audio, much like the lesson study mechanism we looked at earlier did at the beginning. But instead, I'll use the default option, which is to just speak the language study items sequentially, with a programmable interval between the study items. I'll click Generate, and then go hear the results in the media player. You can tell it's a different media file because the pauses between the words are longer because of the 2-second interval setting. Note that I could have done something fancier using a markup template, such as having it include the English translations, kind of like the hands-free tool does. Also note that if my study items didn't already have audio media files associated with them, it would have synthesized them first. Lastly, note that I could also upload a video file and map the text to it. Alternatively, I could reference an external video file on the web somewhere. JTLanguage also has special support for referencing existing YouTube videos, which can be played in the media player. Additionally, there are features for extracting subtitles from YouTube videos. See the example course's YouTube lesson for an example. Dictionary. JTLanguage supports a dictionary mechanism. Access it via the Resources Dictionary menu navigation, which will show the dictionary search page. Mobile application users can use the dictionary online or offline if the entries have been imported or added by the course or media download mechanism. You have options related to the searching, including several text matching types. The parse best and parse all matching types allow sentences to be parsed and individual words looked up. For all match types, you can look up multiple items if they are put on separate lines in the search box. Dictionary entries support associated audio and pictures. At present, I have only Chinese and Japanese dictionaries imported from external sources, CEDICT and EDICT in this case. But it's user editable such that teachers can create, edit, and import entries. I will look for more dictionary sources for other languages. Other resources. The dictionary is just the first of several resources planned. I have in mind to add support for a translator, grammar database, blogs, forum, text chat, voice chat, and useful links. Issues and caveats. Note that there are a few problems in importing the LDS content with a web crawler mechanism I created for this. They are primarily that the different language translations don't match in several cases. Sometimes paragraphs are missing in one or the other, and sometimes sentences are combined in one language but separate in another. The latter affects my sentence parsing, where I want to show individual sentences in the different languages and expect that they match up. Because of this, I added special support for manually editing sentence boundaries in the study list editor, and I had it save the information such that subsequent imports will apply the same fixes. I've gone through the Preach My Gospel lessons and fixed most of these cases, usually either splitting or joining English sentences to roughly match the target language. Perhaps we could encourage translators to try to maintain one-to-one sentence mapping. The Edit Study List text page will show problems with sentence mismatches. I'm showing Spanish because I haven't applied fixes here yet. I can click on the Edit Sentence Runs action button to display the sentence boundary editor. Examining it, I see that He loves us. He understands and feels our sorrows and rejoices in our progress. Pair of sentences is actually one sentence in Spanish. Él nos ama y entiende y siente nuestros pesares y se regocija con nuestro progreso. So what I'll do is drag select the two English sentences in one selection, and then click the Split or Join Selected Sentences button. We see that the error message disappeared. I joined the English sentences because I thought I should give priority to keeping the target language items intact. In cases where the translation is actually different or out of sync, I addressed it in a few different ways depending on the case, sometimes leaving the target language blank for missing text, sometimes resorting to an automated translation, also saving the information for future imports, so I could keep the process automated. Other issues, primarily for Japanese and somewhat with Chinese, have to do mainly with my word boundary detection and translation of the text to phonetic forms. These are non-trivial problems because of the inherent ambiguities. I just had to do my best to try to pick the likely mapping with the limited information I have in an automated way. For the word boundary problems, where different groups of characters could be read or split in different ways resulting in different translations, I added special support for manually editing word boundaries, also saving the information for future imports, similar to what I did with the sentence run editor. However, with my limited language skills, I only fixed a few of these I encountered during testing, usually just in the first section of the first lesson. Because of this editing support, I can get others to help me fix these instances. However, I don't know yet if a particular fix applies to other instances. Hopefully time will tell. For the conversion to Kana and Romaji, if the word boundary fix doesn't resolve the issue, the fix is to edit the text using the Edit Content Text button link for the study list. I also save these changes so that subsequent imports will apply the edit. A special course option sentence fixes key serves as a flag and file name prefix for saving these fixes. Note that to avoid excessive hits on the church website, I set up the importer to cache the web pages so that subsequent imports just read the pages from my hard disk, with an option to refresh the cache should the content change. Note that the import mechanism is actually in the website itself, but only users with administrator user role can see and use it. For now, I will manage it, but in the future, I might be able to have help such that any administrator could rerun the importer for updated content or add new languages, for example. With respect to the mobile apps, because of the size of the media, you might have to only download selected chunks of media for lessons or groups, or use an option which downloads it on demand, or just reference the online version. I discussed this in the video setting up JTLanguage for LDS Missionaries. The phone apps use a hybrid scheme where they generate HTML pages for the UI. Because of this, I can share key libraries between the web application and the phone apps. The Razor code for the HTML generation is mostly shared, but needs special using preambles since the web.config support was not implemented by Microsoft. I use ASP.NET for the web app and the Xamarin support for it for the phone apps, plus a special library I created to mimic parts of the MVC mechanism, as there wasn't one for the Xamarin stuff at the time of creation. I currently only have Chinese and Japanese versions, but I will be working to get other languages up as well. The main missing part is dictionary support. The current version splits up Preach My Gospel into 2 separate courses. It should be possible to have them merged. The key issue is the word vocabulary, how to come up with matching definitions across languages. I have in mind to do some experiments with automating this. The other issue is a sentence boundary issue I already mentioned. Lastly, other caveats are JTLanguage itself and my server for it. JTLanguage is huge and not particularly efficiently coded. I'm running the server for it on a dedicated computer just in my home on my local ISP. It probably can't handle more than a few simultaneous users at a time doing computationally intensive stuff or big downloads. It needs some multi-user and load testing. In general, it's all not real well tested, parts are very experimental, and probably still has lots of bugs. The UI is simple HTML, which is a bit outdated and clunky sometimes, but gets the job done. It's a super ambitious project, and I still have lots to do on it. Conclusion. In this video, we looked mainly at the hierarchical study content browsing and storage mechanism, where the Preach My Gospel lessons were organized as a hierarchy of a course, groups, lessons, and content items in the form of media items and study lists, the latter storing individual study items, being either text paragraphs, sentences, or words. We spent most of the time, however, looking at the study tools JTLanguage provides, mostly at the text study tool and the flash tool, and a little at the flip, match, hands-free, test, and lesson study tools. We looked at some content creating and editing features and supporting mechanisms. I hope you can see that JTLanguage is no lightweight tool. Initially, its complexity due to all these features and flexibility might be disconcerting and an obstacle to its adoption. But once you settle on the basic mechanisms you will use, you'll probably find that the complexity recedes to the background. You don't normally deal with the editing and configuration features, which constitute the biggest portion of the software. I think of JTLanguage kind of like a set of power tools, such that you can do a number of things which are not necessarily practical or safe. Nevertheless, I would look forward to working with you to make this tool available in some form to our missionaries. I think it could really help them. Thank you.